Well, Florida has announced plans to end vaccine mandates statewide, including for school children. It would make Florida the first state to end a long-standing and constitutionally upheld practice of requiring certain vaccines for school students. Let's bring in Candace DeMatteis to dig in deeper on this. She's the Vice President of Policy and Advocacy at the Partnership to Fight Infectious Disease. Thank you for being with us. We heard vaccines was a huge topic on Capitol Hill earlier today with the Secretary of Health and Human Services testifying, and then of course what we're seeing in the states. Let's just start with what parents might be most interested in, and that's what could happen if school children do not get vaccinated.
Well, I think the answer to that is obvious. All we have to do is look at history. It tells us what the consequences are when children are left vulnerable to infectious diseases. It's 100% predictable, and it's completely avoidable. Vaccines have been a huge success story, and sadly, declines in vaccination rates are the reasons we're seeing the measles outbreak and continued across many states. Higher rates of pertussis and other infectious diseases. So it's a predictable tragedy that we can avoid.
We hear this framed, and we did from Secretary Kennedy today, as sort of individual parent choice, that you are given the power to make the health choices for you and your family that you want to make, not that the government is sort of mandating you to make. So if you are a family that does want to get your child vaccinated, does that totally protect you? I mean, if you're getting your kid vaccinated, shouldn't that be enough? Or are there broader implications if the parents next door to you decide not to get their child vaccinated as well?
Well, it's important that vaccination certainly protects you, but it also protects people around you who can't get vaccinated. For example, children under the age of 1 are not protected against measles, mumps, or rubella because that vaccine does not start until after their first birthday. So you may have a 5-year-old attending school who's protected and a 6-month-old at home who isn't. And so that's why, vaccination not only protects the individual vaccinated, but it creates a wall of protection around those who are not and cannot for different reasons.
What are some of the key vaccines that are critical in terms of your group's work for children specifically to beginning right now?
Well, there are a number of vaccines that are recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics that protect children. They have a long safety record and are very effective. Measles, mumps, and rubella, or MMR, is one. Protection against polio, obviously. DTaP is diphtheria, pertussis, and tetanus. That's another one that is widely recommended and used. And these recommendations typically have come from the federal government. Many people are creating, have doubts about the recommendations that may be coming and are looking more to physician groups and specialty groups. And ultimately, if you're a parent, all of us want the best for our children. Talk to your pediatrician and find out what they think. They know the science, they know the medicine, and they know your children. So those are really the best resources for parents who have questions.
In the wake of what we're seeing in Florida, what we're seeing out of Washington in this administration right now, have you seen a sort of rise of misinformation? Has it been more difficult to combat longstanding sort of mis and disinformation that has been discredited? Is that becoming more and more difficult for you and your line of work?
It absolutely is. I mean, you really can't almost avoid it. There's so much noise out there, and it's there's studies that show that disinformation gets shared more readily than the factual information and the science-based information. So it's perpetuated, especially in social media circles. So there's so much of it out there. It's no wonder that people have questions and people are confused, and that's why it's so important to lean in on those trusted sources for information, your personal physician, pharmacist, particularly if you have questions about adult vaccines. Talk to the people who know the science, who know the medicine, and can give you the best advice.
Let's say this sort of statewide trend continues where you have states like Florida doing one thing, the western states, California, Washington, Oregon, doing their own thing in terms of a vaccine alliance, I think is what they have called it. How much does that complicate children's health if you have this sort of patchwork of public health vaccine recommendations that varies state by state?
It really undermines our overall public health strategy across the United States if we have states doing very different things, and the viruses and the pathogens that these vaccines protect against don't care. They'll cross the state border in a heartbeat. All that they're looking for is a vulnerable host to infect, and sadly that is what we're setting our children up to when we undermine access to vaccines, spreading this and disinformation, and then reducing access. Also, polling shows that most people support childhood vaccine mandates. So it's an interesting juxtaposition, sadly being politicized, but the public, at least according to the pollings, don't support it.
Candace DeBateas with the Partnership to Fight Infectious Disease. Thank you for your perspective.
Thank you.